The man who stole my life savings 7 years ago just walked into my daughter's engagement party, smiling like the devil who forgot his sins. My name is Ellen Carter, 64 years old retired school teacher and lifelong believer in second chances, or at least I was. That night, I wasn't supposed to feel anything but pride. My daughter Rachel was finally getting engaged to a man who seemed to adore her, and I'd spent the whole week telling myself not to cry during the toast. But when the door opened and I saw his face, I forgot how to breathe. There he was. The man who had haunted every lonely night after my husband died, the same charming smile, the same confident stride, the same storm-colored eyes that once made me believe in love again. Back then, his name was Mark Reynolds, a man who promised comfort and companionship while quietly draining the $80,000 my late husband had left me to live on. Now apparently reborn as Michael Stone, he stood at my daughter's side, hand resting possessively on her waist, greeting guests like a politician at a fundraiser. My glass slipped from my hand. The sound of shattering crystal sliced through the music, sharp as a gunshot. Everyone turned toward me. I froze, pretending to laugh it off while my pulse thudded in my ears like a warning drum. He didn't flinch. He just smiled. That same damn smile that used to make me feel safe. Only now it felt like a blade. Rachel hurried over, glowing, and ghost was the right word. Mark No Michael extended his hand with the smooth confidence of a man who'd practiced every gesture. "Mrs. Carter," he said warmly, "I've heard so much about you. Rachel talks about you all the time." His voice hadn't changed, soft, calm, perfectly rehearsed. For a heartbeat, I almost wondered if I was wrong, if grief and age had blurred my memory. But then he tilted his head just slightly the same way he used to when he was lying. My stomach turned to stone. I forced a smile and shook his hand, even as every instinct screamed to run. How lovely I managed. "And what do you do, Mr. Stone?" "I help people manage their investments," he replied smoothly. The irony nearly made me choke. Of course he did. All around us, guests were laughing, drinking, oblivious to the quiet war beginning in the corner of that pristine Chicago apartment. I smiled and nodded through the rest of the introductions, but inside something old and sharp woke up in me, something I thought I'd buried, after he vanished with my savings and my trust. I knew better than to confront him there. Men like Mark didn't crumble under accusation, they twisted it, wore innocence like armor, and made you doubt your own sanity. So I smiled for the cameras, hugged my daughter, and promised myself one thing. Before this wedding happened, I would find out exactly what game he was playing, and this time he wouldn't win. I was 57 when I met him the first time. 6 months a widow, still wearing my wedding ring because taking it off felt like betraying Robert. My days were quiet, my nights unbearable. A friend convinced me to join a grief support group at the community center where people sat in folding chairs and tried to stitch their lives back together with words. That's where I met Mark Reynolds. He was 40-something polite in a way men rarely are anymore, with that mix of warmth and humility that makes you feel seen. He told me he'd lost his sister the year before, and somehow our pain recognized each other. We had coffee after every meeting. He remembered how I took it 2 sugars, no cream, and asked about the books I used to teach in class. He laughed at my jokes, listened when I cried, and said the thing every lonely woman wants to hear. "You deserve happiness again." For 10 months, I believed him. He made me feel beautiful at an age when the world tends to look past women like me. When he talked about a small business investment we could make together, I didn't even hesitate. It felt like building a future again, like trusting life to be kind for once. Then one morning, he was gone. Phone disconnected, apartment empty. The $80,000 I'd wired to our joint venture vanished with him. The police filed a report and shrugged. Not enough evidence. My friends told me to let it go, that it could have happened to anyone. But it hadn't happened to them. It had happened to me. For months, I woke in the night hearing his voice, thinking I saw him in crowds. Eventually, grief hardened into survival. I sold the house, moved closer to Rachel, and told myself I'd learned my lesson. I thought the nightmare was over, until the engagement party. Seeing him again wearing a new name like a tailored suit, Michael Stone made the room tilt. Rachel, glowing with happiness, introduced him as the man who finally made her believe in love again. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and clapped with everyone else. He was older now, slicker, but the performance hadn't changed. Still the careful listener, still the gentle laugh, still the fake humility that hides a predator's hunger. Only this time, the prey was my daughter. That night, I couldn't sleep. I searched his name online, Michael Stone, and found nothing before 2020. No records, no history, no traces. A ghost. That's when I hired Patricia Newell, a retired FBI investigator who specialized in financial fraud. 3 days later, she slid a thick folder across my kitchen table. "You were right," she said. "Michael Stone doesn't exist before 2020. My hands trembled as I turned the pages, licenses, tax filings, business documents, all starting the same month, January 2020. And at the back of the file, 3 photos, 3 women all smiling beside him, all ruined within a year of meeting him. 2 had lost everything. 1 had simply disappeared. I closed the file, stomach twisting. He wasn't just back. He was hunting again. And this time, the next name on his list was my daughter's. When I finally tried to warn Rachel, she looked at me like I was the villain in her love story. Michael had already planted the seed, his favorite kind of poison. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling with the kind of calm that hides anger, "you just can't stand that I'm happy." Happy. That word felt like a knife. I had spent years teaching her what love should look like: respect, trust, honesty. And now she was defending a man whose entire life was a lie. Within a week, I was uninvited from my own daughter's wedding. The official reason was that things were too tense, but the truth was simple: he'd won round 1. The fear that had sat in my stomach for days turned into something sharper. Anger has a way of waking you up when grief tries to drown you. I wasn't going to let another woman, especially my daughter, become his next obituary. Patricia, my investigator, introduced me to Agent David Chen, a federal agent who had been tracking a series of cross-state scams involving romance fraud and identity theft. He laid out the evidence across my kitchen table like a war map: photos, transaction records, missing person files. 4 women dead, all accidents, all connected to different aliases of the same man: Mark Reynolds, Michael Stone, and before that, someone named Mason Reed. David's expression was grim. He's not just a con artist, Mrs. Carter. He's a predator who upgrades his methods every few years. Money isn't the end goal anymore. It's power. That word lodged in my chest. Power. He'd taken my money before, but what he wanted now was my daughter's life. We needed proof. Real proof. So I did the hardest thing a mother can do. I pretended to forgive him. I called Michael and asked him to lunch. Told him I'd been unfair, that I just wanted my daughter to be happy. I even practiced sounding sincere. He showed up right on time, carrying that easy smile, and the same cologne he used to wear, the scent, hit me like a ghost. Over pasta and white wine, I played the part of the remorseful mother. I watched him study me, probably enjoying the idea that I was back under his spell. When I asked if he'd ever regretted hurting someone, his answer sliced through the pretense like glass. Once he said softly, "With a woman named Ellen Carter." She was kind. I broke her heart. I've spent years trying to make it right. He was toying with me. He knew exactly who I was, and he wanted me to know that he knew. I smiled, pretending not to understand. But inside, something primal woke up, a kind of cold fury that only a mother protecting her child can feel. That night, I met with Patricia and Agent Chen. I told them he's escalating. This isn't about stealing money anymore. He wants control. He wants her. Patricia nodded. He doesn't just want to con Rachel. He wants to own her. We agreed on a dangerous plan. I would stage an accident, make Michael think I was fragile, out of the way. Patricia said it would give him confidence, make him careless. So I fell down the stairs. Nothing serious, just a few fake bruises, a bandaged wrist, and a shaky voice. Rachel bought the story, and right on cue, Michael began visiting. The first time he sat by my bedside, he brought flowers and that same counterfeit warmth. "You've got to be careful, Ellen," he said, brushing invisible dust off my sleeve. "You wouldn't want to fall again. Rachel needs someone strong to guide her if anything ever happened to you." He smiled as he said it. It wasn't a threat in words, it was a rehearsal for murder. And that's when I stopped feeling afraid. Because once you know what a monster wants, you finally know where to aim. By the time autumn settled over Chicago, the FBI had gathered a mountain of evidence: forged marriage licenses, fake business filings, and a new joint bank account that Michael Stone had quietly opened in both his and Rachel's names. It was enough to paint him as a master manipulator, but not enough to lock him away. He hadn't actually stolen anything yet, and every lie he told was wrapped in plausible charm. We needed his own words. Saturday night, I put on a wire. Agent Chen's voice crackled softly in my earpiece as I stood outside Michael's apartment. "Remember," he said, "you're safe. We're right here." I wasn't sure anyone could be safe with a man like Michael, but I nodded anyway and knocked. He opened the door wearing a casual sweater looking like a magazine ad for domestic bliss. "Ellen," he said smoothly. What a surprise. Feeling better, I stepped inside, every instinct screaming to run. "Much better," I said. "Actually, I came to talk." "Talk." He gestured toward the couch. About what I turned to face him and dropped the mask. About who you really are. For the first time since the engagement party, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. His smile faltered, then froze. "I'm not sure what you mean. I know who you are, Mark." Silence. His eyes sharpened, all warmth gone. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, dangerous. "Then you also know no one will believe you." I held his gaze. "The FBI will. They already do." He laughed softly, the kind of laugh that made my skin crawl. "The FBI," he said. "You think this is the first time someone's tried that?" "You're too late, Ellen. Rachel already signed over her trust fund. Everything she owns, everything you built is mine now." For a moment, I forgot to breathe. My throat tightened, my heart hammering so loud I was sure the wire would pick it up. "You're lying," I whispered. He tilted his head, smiling with that old cruelty. "Am I? She trusts me completely. You taught her that." I took one step closer. "You used to be good at lies, Mark, but not this time." He shrugged. "Doesn't matter. By the time you convince anyone, I'll be gone and she'll never recover." The sound of heavy boots thundered behind the door. Before I could reply, the door burst open. Agents flooded the apartment, weapons raised. "Michael Reynolds, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder," one of them shouted. Michael didn't move. He just looked at me calm as ever and said, "You were always too late, Ellen." And then heels clicked on the hardwood floor behind the agents. "No, Mark," a voice said, steady and cold. She wasn't. Rachel stepped out from the hallway, her face pale but fierce. My daughter. Michael's mask cracked for the first time. "Rachel," he said, voice breaking, "this isn't..." She cut him off. "Save it. I didn't sign anything. The papers you gave me were fake. The FBI printed them." She turned to the agents. "You can add attempted fraud to the list." Michael's composure collapsed. For the first time, he looked small-cornered. I stood there watching as they cuffed him, feeling both sick and free. He'd spent years perfecting the art of deception, only to be undone by the two women he'd underestimated most. Patricia had been right. He wanted to own my daughter. Instead, she owned the ending. 2 years later, Mark Reynolds or Michael Stone, or whatever name he thought would save him next, was sentenced to life in prison. Justice didn't bring celebration, just quiet peace. The kind that lets you breathe again without waiting for the next storm. Rachel and I returned to the small lake house where everything began. The water was calm, the kind of stillness that only comes after chaos. She stood beside me on the porch holding 2 mugs of coffee and said softly, "You taught me what real love looks like, not what it sounds like." That undid me. Tears I'd been holding for years finally came, because she was right. Real love isn't about promises whispered over champagne. It's the kind that shows up when everything else falls apart. To everyone listening, if someone ever makes you doubt your own mind, don't stay quiet. Speak. Reach out. And if you ever think it's too late to start over, look at me. I'm not just a survivor. I'm proof that wisdom can be sharper than fear. We women are not weak. We're just too accustomed to forgiving those who don't deserve it. But once you stop apologizing for your strength, no one can use your heart as a weapon again. Some monsters wear tailored suits, but some mothers. We wear armor made of truth. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please share, and follow Real Her Stories, because somewhere out there another woman needs to know she's not alone and that it's never too late to take her power back.